What's up, everybody? It's Cole, your friendly neighborhood sound designer, and today I wanted to give you guys an update on the survival horror game that I am working on. It's called Dread Tales. Early access should be hitting Steam late this year. So the way we're going to do this video, I'm going to show you a moment of gameplay with some cool sound stuff. We're going to dive into Reaper. I'm going to show you how I actually constructed those sounds, things that I recorded, stuff like that. And then we're going to go back into the game engine, Godot here, and I'll show you how the sounds were implemented. All right, so here we are in the charming, cozy, lovely world of Dread Tales. Now, I do want to just give you guys a quick note while we're walking to the proper location that this game is very much so still in progress. It's in active development, so a lot of stuff is just missing. There's some sound stuff missing. There's a lot of textures missing. So if things look kind of flat and uninteresting, well, that's why. We're still being worked on. So we're not able to use Fmod. The lead developer just wanted to use the tools in the engine. Which means we get to make a lot of our own custom solutions and tools, which is really fun. And I've been getting to learn a lot more about audio programming. Because we're using such limited tools, that means I really am not able to make too many adjustments in the engine on the fly like I would with middleware. So that means I kind of need to get things right the first time, or else I'll have to go back in and re-export sounds. So the way I've been doing that is I'll pick an area like this radio tower, and I will do all the props and stuff that go into this whole little slice of gameplay. And the reason I do it that way is because then it allows me to create everything in context with one another. Similarly to how when you're mixing a song, it's kind of a no-no to solo instruments and do EQs that way, because how something sounds in isolation might totally break down and sound totally wrong when you put it in context of the rest of the song. So same idea here. I'm not creating sound effects in isolation and then bringing them over and going, oh, this doesn't sound good, or I'm trying to make everything in concert with one another. So let me show you this fun gameplay moment and highlight some sounds. Oh, and by the way, I have not had time to put concrete footsteps in, so yeah, just ignore the footsteps for now. All right, so you'll see this cool, ominous looking tower. I won't tell you what it does or why, just tell you that the player has to activate it. So if we go over here, you can see this computer's offline, so I can't use it. So if we head over to the power box here, got some nifty sounds. And then, how do you like these inventory sounds? Got the clicking. You can move stuff around. Got a nice hot bar. What did I do to record those? I think I did, oh yeah, I found an old sewing machine and just clicked knobs and buttons and then messed with it a bunch. That's how I made some of those inventory sounds. And then the actual like opening and closing of the inventory, that was just all stuff that I did recording a backpack. So, all right, so we're gonna put this battery in here. You can see our battery has some juice, which powers our computer. And now you can hear that it's on. That will get the player's attention so they don't rush off. Got some nice vintage typing sounds here. I made all the UI sounds in Massive X, the synthesizer. But here we go. Here's the moment I wanted to show you. Nice. So there is there's supposed to be like a 3D model of a speaker here so you can hear the radio stuff, but it hasn't been made yet, so right now it's just an invisible audio emitter. And yeah, I got really inspired by those number stations, those like covert spy stations that are on shortwave radios. So I added a lot of really freaky stuff for the ambience there. But anyway, let me show you how I actually created that tower sound. So let's go head over into Reaper here. So here's how I actually made the sound. And you might notice that there's these like different sections. I'll explain what that's about in a little bit, but let me just, I'm not going to go through every single sound, but I will show you just some of the fun things that we've got here. So for instance, the startup sound here. This is just the startup layer. Here's how it sounds in context. My father-in-law has a lot of tools in his garage, and he has like a grinder. I wish I knew what it was. I'm not really handy, but it's like just a rotating wheel, and it had a really cool sound. So just by adding some pitch, some good old Decapitator, Crystallizer. I really like this great doubler preset, and I just did a little fiddling with that, and then cut out some of the really excessive low end. Here's how it sounds without effects. Not that cool or menacing, but add some fun effects and that sounds pretty good, I think. For a lot of these different metal pieces, I just added some stuff that I found from Free Sound. Like this is evidently some kind of like storage crate that's being blown in the wind. Here, let's take off all the effects. All I really did was some control because this structure is so rickety looking, you know. I wanted it to really feel like all these metal parts are kind of jingling around. And then this one was pretty cool. This comes from the free sound library from Spec Travelers. I love how that sounds. Gives it some really nice beefy low end. So all together, yeah, that sounds pretty good, I think. I have this sound library that I bought that I love. It is just some metal impacts. So this one evidently is a garage door. I like how that one sounds like it's really reverberating through the entire kind of column of the tower here. And then I just added this sub here. Yeah. And what did I add to that? Well, really all I did was just take everything out except for the sub frequencies. And I made sure that the pitch matched this when you put it together. Yeah. Sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, so I wanted to give the impression that there were like different motors. So I got that main motor layer that I showed you. But then there's this middle section here, and I wanted it to have sort of its own motor, but I didn't want it to clash with all the kind of bassy frequencies that are already happening. So I chose, I believe it's called a lathe, right? And I just chopped it up to taste here. See, so they don't get in each other's way at all. And I think I even did maybe like a high pass on that one. So for this middle layer, there's even more of that same sample of the earthquake and some more of that metal door. I just chose different sections of the sample. But one thing that I thought sounded really cool, I just found this really cool simple recording of somebody basically using a creaky old oven. But when you put it in context, it almost gives off the vibe of like a roller coaster to me. And so I think it really fit well with like the idea of almost like a roller coaster chain kind of moving. Yeah. Again, I think that sounds pretty cool. And I use more of that same library for metal impacts. And then the last bit, this part was way more complicated. This is like the different satellite dishes unfolding. A lot of it, is just pieced together from different machines. So I'm not going to show you every single one, but I will show you a couple that ended up being some of my favorites. So we've got so we've got this coffee machine here. I'll show you what it sounds like without effects, and then I'll show you some of the processing I did here. And you can see I just did a lot of chopping, to make like the wind up and wind down work, but add some effects. Again, it's more pitch, decapitator, crystallizer, the holy trinity, pretty much. More oven creaks. So I really wanted this to sound like this entire thing is just vibrating, so I added a lot of like boomy low end. Actually had double transients going here. This one, again, it's got all this like just vibrating metal, so I use kind of like this chain link fence. It's just a library of a guy shaking a chain link fence, and I just pitched it, all the basic stuff to it. Yeah, and this one I thought sounded really cool. This is just a machine cutter. You might notice some artifacts in it, but honestly, you can't really hear it in context of the whole sound. All right, now to wrap this up, let's talk a little bit about how I actually implemented this sound. You might notice that I have color coding here. So let me show you what that's all about. The problem I was facing is this tower is really, really tall, so it doesn't really make sense for it to sound flat. Like this is way above the player's head. So I really wanted to have some control over the attenuation, over how far away different pieces of the tower sound. So what we did is we actually created 3 3D audio stream players, one for the bass, one for the mid, and one for the top. And then I have those placed where I want them and the attenuation settings how I want them. And so what I did was I went ahead and did everything here in Reaper to this animation, and I mixed it all at the same volume. I then exported this region, but I soloed each section's sound effects and left silence either at the head or the tail of the sound effect so that everything is being triggered in one event. And then here, like you can see in this mid stream here, okay, here's the sound file. Well, there's silence here where it's waiting for the bottom section to play its sounds, and then it will kick in. And then when it's done, all these files are the same length so that they're in sync when they trigger. And the way we triggered it was through this animation player. There's actually a function being called on the very first frame of this animation. So that basically the second they hit deploy on the computer, all of these sounds are actually triggered at the same time, but because they have the proper amount of silence, everything is in sync with the animation as I left it, and I still have control over how far away each thing sounds. So if we go into the script here, you can see it's calling each one right there. All right, and then the last thing, the radio static sound. Now, I have a lot more work to do on this. That was more or less a placeholder. It's going to play this ambient loop of radio static. And then, like I said, I was kind of inspired to include some creepy sounds since this is a horror game. The final frame of the animation triggers this loop to start. If you actually look at this file, you can see it's set to loop. So that's the bed. But then we have a spot here for these randomized one-shots. I have a couple preloaded there, kind of as placeholders, but essentially after this function of starting the radio ambience is played, it then activates a timer. When the timer runs out of time, it triggers any one of those random sound effects to play. and then it resets the timer and starts the process over. It just keeps the ambience loop from being too obvious when it's resetting, and it just continues to allow me to have flexibility to add flavors and kind of some extra creepy sounds and stuff like that. All right, so there you have it. Yeah, that's just kind of one little scene that I've been working on. There's several more that I've been doing, but I thought this one would be really fun to show off. Because it kind of showed off an interesting problem of like, how do we take a scene like this tower, which has dozens of sounds being triggered, right? But we also wanted to have more precise control over, where in relation to the player those sounds are being triggered. And I don't know. Let me know what you think. Did we handle that well? Would you have done it differently? Go ahead and leave me a comment. And if you like seeing how games are made, feel free to throw me a subscribe for the channel. I just started working on a new game that I haven't announced yet, but will be also releasing periodic devlogs for that game as well. And yeah, it's going to be a really exciting 2024 for me. I have 3 games in the works now. So yeah, if you like seeing the behind the scenes stuff, feel free to throw me a subscribe. All right, have an amazing rest of your day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.